Imagine standing in the desert of your own life, surrounded by sins, regrets, and whispers telling you it's too late. But then, a single reminder reaches you. You were ordered to obey Allah, and you were created to perform good deeds. My friend, Saalim's story teaches us, it doesn't matter how far you've fallen. It doesn't matter how dark your past is. Allah's mercy is greater than your sins. All it takes is one sincere step back to Him, and the doors of Jannah open wide. Don't waste your life. Start today. Obey Allah. Do good. Save your soul. Subscribe to Deen in Minute for more stories that will shake your heart and remind you of the purpose you were created for. He wasted his life in sin until Allah sent him a sign, Hazrat Ali's wisdom. The desert night was heavy with silence, the kind of silence that carries its own weight, pressing against the heart. Stars scattered across the sky, countless and glittering, as if each one was a witness to the secrets buried beneath the sands of Arabia. In a small village on the edge of Damascus, a young man named Saalim sat alone, his eyes fixed on the horizon. His hands trembled as they held a parchment, stained with the tears that had fallen again and again. The words written on it were simple, but they pierced his soul. You were ordered to obey Allah, and you were created to perform good deeds. These are the words of Hazrat aliibnabitalib. May Allah be pleased with him, passed down from generation to generation. Saalim had heard them before, like an echo in the wind, but tonight they burned into him as though carved on his heart. Saalim was not an ordinary young man. His life had been torn between two worlds, the world of faith he had been born into, and the world of sin he had chosen to walk. By day, he wore the mask of a believer, praying in the masjid with the rest of his people, bowing his head when the imam recited Quran. But by night, his soul was chained to darkness. He wandered into gatherings where the name of Allah was mocked, where arrogance and greed ruled. He traded honesty for wealth, compassion for pride, and purity for desires that left his heart empty and cold. And yet, in all of it, he could never silence the whisper inside him, a whisper that reminded him of his father's voice, a man who had died years ago, holding Saalim's hand, saying, "My son, remember, this world is fleeting. Every deed you do is a step either toward Jannah or Jahannam. Choose wisely." That night, when the village slept, Saalim could no longer endure the war inside him. He left his home and walked deep into the desert, carrying the parchment he had found among his father's belongings. The words of Hazrat Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, followed him like shadows. You were ordered to obey Allah, and you were created to perform good deeds. He fell to his knees in the middle of the sand, his tears soaking into the earth. "Ya Allah," he cried, his voice trembling, "I have disobeyed you. I have wasted my life. I traded your pleasure for the laughter of men. I broke the trust you gave me. But, Ya Rab, I cannot live like this anymore. Show me your mercy before death comes for me." The desert wind howled around him, as though carrying his words up to the heavens. But Saalim did not feel peace. Instead, an eerie chill ran down his spine, and he turned his head quickly. In the distance, he saw a caravan approaching, torches flickering, shadows moving, camels groaning under heavy loads. He thought perhaps Allah had sent him a sign, but his heart tightened when he recognized the faces. They were men of the city, merciless traders who dealt in forbidden things, the very men he once followed into sin. They had mocked Allah's commands, laughed at the Quran, and called Saalim their brother. Now, they stopped before him, their leader grinning with sharp teeth. Well, the man sneered. "If it isn't Saalim, the boy who used to chase after our gold. What are you doing here in the desert alone? Have you come back to us?" Salim's chest heaved, but his voice came firm, stronger than he thought possible. "No, I have left that life. I am no longer one of you." The leader laughed cruelly, and his men joined him, their voices rising like a storm. "Left us? You? The one who lied for coins, who stole from the poor, who laughed when the orphans cried. You think Allah will forgive you now? You think you can wash away your stains with a few tears?" Their words were knives, cutting deep into wounds Saalim thought were healing. But then, deep inside, he remembered the parchment clutched in his hand. He whispered the words like a shield. I was ordered to obey Allah. I was created to perform good deeds. The leader's eyes narrowed, and in a voice dripping with venom, he said, If you are no longer ours, then you are our enemy. One of the men lunged forward, drawing a blade. Salim's heart thundered, and for a moment he thought his end had come. But suddenly, the sky cracked with lightning though no clouds were above, and the ground beneath them shook violently. The camels cried out in terror, throwing their riders off balance. The men stumbled, cursing and shouting, as the desert roared with power. Salim dropped his parchment and raised his hands. Ya Allah, save me! The men scattered, fear etched on their faces, as though unseen hands were chasing them into the darkness. Salim remained alone, trembling, his chest heaving with both fear and awe. He knew then that Allah had shown him a sign. Allah had answered him. Allah had given him another chance. From that night onward, Salim changed. He returned to his village, not as the man who sought the world, but as the man who sought the hereafter. He gave away his wealth in secret, feeding the poor, clothing the orphans. He woke in the last third of the night, whispering in sujud, begging Allah for forgiveness. He became a man who smiled at others, who helped the weak, who remembered Allah in every breath. And when the villagers asked him why his eyes often shone with tears, he would simply say, Because I wasted years of my life, and now every second is precious. Years passed, and Salim grew old. His beard turned white, his steps grew slower, but his heart only grew stronger in faith. When his final hour came, he lay upon his bed, his family gathered around him. He held the same parchment in his hands, his fingers trembling, but his eyes filled with light. With his last breath, he whispered, I was ordered to obey Allah, and I was created to perform good deeds. Do not waste your lives, my children. Do not waste them as I once did. And with that, he returned to his Lord. The villagers buried him beneath the same desert sky where he had once cried out to Allah, and for years after, people would sit by his grave, remembering his story. Parents told their children about Salim, the man who turned back to Allah, who was saved by his mercy, and who left behind words of fire and light. His story spread far beyond Damascus, across deserts and seas, until hearts everywhere whispered Hazrat Ali's words anew. You were ordered to obey Allah, and you were created to perform good deeds. And so, even centuries later, whenever a soul feels lost in sin, whenever someone trembles under the weight of their mistakes, Salim's story rises like a lantern in the dark, reminding them, it is never too late to turn back to Allah. Don't waste your life chasing the world. You were created for Allah, and every good deed brings you closer to Him. Subscribe to Deen in Minute for stories that will remind you of your true purpose.